Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Eric.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, I don't know what you're about to say.
Yeah.
But whatever I have to say is more important. Because this morning when I was shaving,
Yes.
I shaved down to just a mustache. And I was like, I think I look good with a mustache.
Then you shaved it off.
I shaved it off, but I was like, I really considered keeping it. But I feel like you would have made fun of me, and maybe that's the only reason why. And that's not a good reason to shave your mustache. If you believe in yourself, if you like what you are, the way that you're feeling, you shouldn't let what others' opinions that you perceive
Just for the record, audience.
Yeah.
There was no time when I saw Jeff with a mustache, and there was
never
a time where I put you down.
I felt like you would have been like, why do you have a mustache? And I would have been like, I feel good with my mustache.
And then what?
That's it.
But no. Then what do you think I'm going to say after you say this mustache makes me feel powerful and
yeah. That's the word I would have used. Powerful. That's how I felt with my mustache. My mustache, which looked like...
It conveys...
I sort of looked, I want to say Italian.
That's what you wanted from that?
That's what I got from my mustache. I was like, I look Italian.
Okay. I love the Italian people, Jeff. Mm-hmm. Why would you think that I would insult you and your Italian mustache?
My Italian heritage?
Yeah, we're from Harrison, Jeff. Yeah. Why do you think that I would do that to you?
I'm just saying...
What kind of negativity do you get from me? Am I radiating some...
Next time I show up with a mustache, don't make fun of me.
I won't.
Okay.
You just wanted everyone to be on the same page.
I want everybody out there to know that when I grow a mustache and I look good and I look Italian...
Yeah. Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I guess two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, where's the rat tail?
Well, honestly, okay. Okay, here we go. My clippers are in the mail. They are coming on Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
And I think I could shave it down.
Is this all an Italian thing? Like the rat tail and the mustache? Are you trying to...
No, that's a stereoteip. And
are you going to buy...
That's a harmful stereotype, and I don't like that.
You and your people?
Yeah.
And then
thousands of years.
That's right.
The proud Italian people.
Yeah. What's the Italian meal you're making for tonight?
Bologna sandwiches. Fried bologna.
Guys, we want to let you know that we have an episode today with Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend, with Parks from the Joe Budden Podcast, with Joseph Patel, the noted documentarian, and then tomorrow we're going to do Saturdays with the Indoor Boys, as we do each Saturday.
Yep.
Sunday, a classic episode of
It's
Waste
the
Time
Real
with
classic.
It's the Real.
Yep.
And then we're taking a break.
A
week-long break.
Yeah, because we put out 51 episodes.
Yeah, in a row.
Well, 51 episodes of the actual conversations.
Quarantine radio.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we've also had Saturdays with the Indoor Boys and It's the Real Classic, which all require work as well.
Yeah, so we've worked for 2 months straight.
2 months straight.
So we're going to take a week off to...
recalibrate.
Yeah, reset.
Grow my mustache. Shave down my rat tail.
We're gonna do some other work too, and honestly, do laundry and maybe not stay up until 1:30 in the morning editing every night.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that. Don't leave us.
Yeah. Don't leave us.
Don't leave us
out
there. I think this is a chance.
I wonder if our relationship with our audience is that shallow that people would be like, you want to know what?
1 week.
It's been a week. I'm on to something else.
Forget them.
Yeah.
But what you can do is there's 307 episodes of Waste Time with It's the Real. There's 51 episodes of Quarantine Radio. There's countless videos on YouTube. There's a lot of It's the Real stuff in this world. Hopefully you can find some stuff, revisit it, pass it along to friends, and get people caught up.
Yeah. Forward it to your family.
Yeah.
You know, when anybody sends you some coronavirus tips,
yeah,
send them back our podcast.
Whoa. I got a missed FaceTime audio call right there that shocked me. I don't know if anyone was watching on camera, but it's super loud in the headphones, from Jim Jones,
which is crazy.
Jim Jones. I wonder what he wants, but we're not going to find out right now.
Do you think he wants advice?
Yes, Jeff. Jim Jones took his son out for a drive and was like, "Hey, let me call some of my good driving friends, Eric and Jeff."
Well, first of all, my good friends.
Actually, you don't drive. Yeah, my good friends.
Uh-huh.
And one of them is a driver.
Yeah, I feel like I could give some good advice.
What's that?
For driving.
Yeah. What's your advice?
Make sure
Put your hand out the window.
Yeah.
And just signal.
Yeah.
Make sure to signal. You don't want to be
left
rude.
left is down, and then right is up.
What were we saying? Oh, go to patreon.com/itsthereal. That is where you can contribute to this movement that we have. This is 13 years in the making. This is, again, not just quarantine radio, not just a waste of time with It's the Real. This is everything that we've done, a great track record so far, everything that we're dreaming up for the future. It's a place where you guys can invest in us. We are creators here who do everything independently, and with your help, we could take it just as far as all the big companies are doing and all the bigger media outlets and all the big TV shows out there. We want to compete with them. With your help, we can make this happen. And you guys can go to patreon.com/itsthereal and join hundreds of others who have shown excitement about what we're doing and feel like our voice is an important one and deserves that backing. So thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/itsthereal. And thanks for everyone who's going to join us at patreon.com/itsthereal. Jeff, any last words before we get into the podcast?
Yes. Buongiorno. Grazie. Salud.
Yeah.
The situation. Paulie D. Vinny.
Yeah.
J-Wow.
Oh, wait, there we go. Very Italian. Yeah.
J-Wow. Snooky. The other. Sammy Sweetheart. And Ronnie.
Let's get on the phone now with Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend. Ezra!
What up?
Hey, what's up?
What's happening? How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
We're doing all right too. You know,
Yeah.
day by day, moment by moment. We are 13 years into living on the Upper West Side. We're just curious what the Upper West Side means to you.
Well, I'll always kind of consider it the homeland, because. Oh, what's that? Is that me?
No, that's us. Sorry.
Okay. I'll always consider the Upper West Side kind of the homeland because that's, I guess technically I was born on the Upper East Side. There's a lot more hospitals there. But, that's where my parents lived at 100th and West End when I was a baby. And then, I spent my whole childhood in Jersey. And so I think, when you're like a kid, you're kind of interested in like, where was I born? What happened? So, I always had this kind of special feeling about the Upper West Side. It's like, oh, this is where my parents met. This is where I was a baby. And then, I ended up going to college.
Yeah.
Debatably on the Upper West Side.
Yeah, I mean, like more like Morningside Heights, I guess. But
exactly. Columbia's Morningside Heights. So I don't love it when people call it the Upper West Side. It's definitely it's definitely real cheesy when Columbia people are like, yeah, we go to school up in Harlem.
I know.
You definitely don't go to school in Harlem.
But didn't
anyway,
Columbia take over half of Harlem anyway?
Well, they took over this area. I forget what it's called. It's kind of like very far west Harlem. Yeah, they used eminent domain.
Yeah.
I don't support that.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
But wait, so did you look at any other schools, or was it just Columbia?
No, I looked at a bunch and I applied to a bunch. They were all East Coast schools. I was pretty unambitious about traveling that far. At the end of the ones I actually got into came down to Columbia and Brown. And I thought Brown was cool. They had a students' weekend. I took a train there.
Nice.
And I was like, this seems like a chill spot. But deep down, I just, I always just had this, New York. It's even though it's only about, 30 minutes from the town in New Jersey where I grew up. And again, there's that feeling, this is the homeland. I want to go back to the uptown Manhattan,
For sure. So one of our friends in common is the great Dave One from Chromeo. And did you guys meet at Columbia while you were both there?
Yes, we did. And so I'm a freshman at Columbia, and living full time in the city, I tried to go see as many shows as possible. I was very ambitious when I first got there. And so one show I wanted to go see when I was a freshman was The Streets.
Oh, wow.
'Cause if you remember when that first Streets record came out, it was very fascinating. It was what is this weird English, spoken word, garage rap.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah.
very curious about the Streets, and that I still like that album. And it was the Streets' very first concert ever in the U.S., and it was at the Bowery Ballroom.
Wow.
So I go down with some friends to check it out, and then the opening band was Chromeo, who later I found out this was their first New York show ever. I didn't know at the time. So I see these two guys on stage, and they're playing this weird, funny, funky music, and I remember they played one of their early hits, Needy Girl, and there's a part in it when the narrator's girlfriend calls him.
Yeah.
And so I remember in the show, Dave and P are up there. P's got the talk box. Dave, there's like a part in the song where the phone rings, and then Dave just like picked up a phone on stage and was like, hello? He's like, no, baby, I'm in the middle of a show. What? Oh man, forget you. And then he like hung up, and then the song's about his girlfriend, the needy girlfriend.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was just like, this is so weird, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. But back in the early 2000s, it wasn't. You didn't quite have as much immediate access to stuff. So anyway, like the next week, and Dave's a very memorable looking guy.
Sure.
Yeah, tall.
Very tall.
Tall. And then the next week, I literally just saw him walking out of the main library at Columbia, and there's a few. I'm normally pretty laid back, but there's one of these handful of times in my life where I just felt like I had to go say something, and I was just like, "Oh, hey man, I think I saw you open for the Streets." And he was like, "Oh yeah, that was me. It was my band Chromeo." I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm getting my PhD in French literature." And I was like, "Whoa, what's the story with that?" So then we always stayed in touch. Since then, we've been friends ever since, really.
Yeah. I think that your guys' collaboration of late has been really cool. Can you talk about, for this last album, what Dave brought to the table for you specifically?
Well, in some ways, it was just making a relationship we always had a little more official, because Dave's somebody, ever since, probably starting with the second Vampire Weekend record, I just always loved to pick his brain and play him music and see what he thought. I've actually very vivid memories of playing him Contra demos and seeing which ones he was into, and had some suggestions here and there. So it's always, we've always been tight that way. But I kind of felt like on this record, I just wanted to make it a little more official, and I wanted the one direction I wanted to go in, especially, was to be a little more rigorous about certain lyrical things, because I felt like for me, I'd hit the zenith of a certain type of abstract Upper West Side surrealist style that I'd perfected on a few songs, if I do say so myself. But on this record, I was like, I want to have a few songs that have lines that hit, that feel deep but are straightforward. Anyway, Dave, being a student of pop music and stuff, I really like that, and also being a French literature PhD, as discussed, I knew that he'd be a good person, not just to play him demos like always and talk about what we think is cool and what's going on in culture, but also just to play him, show him lyrics and kind of sometimes go line by line. And we did elements of it before, but at a certain point, it's kind of like with any art you do. You're always going to have a close group of friends who are always down to come over and like listen to what you're doing. At a certain point, if you want to monopolize their time one step further, you should really you should say to them be more of an official part of this. You're one of the executive producers. That's how it felt. And and I really like that aspect of having Dave looped in.
Yeah.
Him playing stuff, him giving notes, and especially that kind of rigorous lyrical editing. Was there any moment beforehand or after the Grammys where you guys sat down and were like, man, honestly, running into each other, coming out of the library, going into the library, all those years back then, to end up in Los Angeles winning on that stage together? Did you sort of take this all in and give it that context? I don't know if we quite had that moment, but one thing I will say is that Dave always really believed in the album, and he's like, "This is, man, I'm seeing it, and we'll see." Because we won one Grammy. If that was that, so be it. Obviously, there's so much behind the scenes with awards and stuff. You just can't count on anything.
Yeah.
I will say that category that we've won in, best alternative album, it's some people might disagree, but to me, when you look through the past winners, it's one of the least cringe categories that the Grammys have to offer. Like, it's like, if you look back, you're like, all right, but, it's a solid mix of artists that I respect. So I've always been kind of like, all right, if that's the one award we ever get and it's in that category, maybe it's for the best. But yeah, so Dave always rode for it. So I think he felt vindicated, and I appreciated that. And one thing I'll say about Dave too is that he came out I think he was in New York at the time, so he came out to come to the Grammys, and so then we do the red carpet, and everybody's hanging out. There's a nice crew of people, and then after it ends, there's like a million parties to go to. And Dave was like, I'm not going to go to the parties. And I was like, you know what, fair enough. Dave's a real one.
Yeah.
He said he didn't want to go to the parties. Then we won. Still didn't want to go to the parties. He just wanted to go have a quiet night at home. And
that's great.
He said we already had a great time together. So fair enough. Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, I love that. I also loved that. I don't know how I happened upon this because I don't actually have Apple Music, but I saw that Larry David ended up unexpectedly on your podcast.
Yes, that's true. Well, I got to differentiate here. What I have is an internet radio show, and I got nothing against the podcast community, of which you guys are major members. But technically speaking, you can't get it in the podcast story because it's basically Beats One, Apple Music. It's a radio station, and it's interesting. There's trade-offs. On the one hand, we get to play as much music as we want.
Yeah.
We can use a big chunk, but on the other hand, you can't get it in the podcast store.
Yeah.
There's weird rules about like pausing and rewinding. But anyway, it's because his daughter Cassie, who's very funny and cool, she's always like, she kind of knew one member of our crew, Seinfeld 2000. Kind of a legendary meme maker.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%. One of my favorite accounts. I don't know who's behind it. I love it.
He's a good guy. Even the man behind the mask is cool too. And so over time he became part of it. So he has all these connections to the Seinfeld community. So way back in the day, he was like, hey, do you know Cassie David? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he's like, oh, we want to have her on the show. And then she became part of the family too. And so during our quarantine edition, we're FaceTiming and we're just chopping up about this and that. And then her dad just kind of came into her room, and she was like, oh my God, what are you? And then he was very good natured and, did a few minutes and of just chatting with us. And we were trying to keep it cool, but totally unexpected, very much in shock.
I mean, like, I'm sure that like you grew up a huge Seinfeld fan, and I'm sure a huge Curb fan. Like, is there one series that you prefer over the other? Like, what is your where does your Seinfeld fandom go?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously Curb is like a living entity, and even the last season had some real highlights. I found, sometimes people are very hard on new seasons of Curb because the old stuff's so classic, but I would say just about every season it hits the highs that the whole series has. So it's hard to compare. I mean, it really depends on the flavor. On the most basic level, of course, there's some exceptions, but basically it's like, do you want to be in New York or LA?
Right.
The Curb will always, if you want that 90s New York vibe, even though it was shot mostly in LA, that's the funny thing about Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It is, Seinfeld has a little more nostalgia. So yeah, kind of like alternate. I can't really say that I have a preference.
So, talking about New York versus Los Angeles, you are basically a Los Angelino at this point. What is it like to go through the pandemic in a place where you can, spread out and I guess get outside for a little fresh air and sort of not be cooped in a New York City apartment?
Well, I think it's much easier, and my heart really goes out to all my friends and family in New York, because I mean, the number one thing that I think about, I guess it depends where you live in New York, but the number one thing is elevators. Because if you when I picture my old spot in New York, just and how much sometimes even stepping outside the house can feel a little bit stressful depending on what kind of mood you're in or what kind of task you have ahead of you. the idea that you got to first things first, get in the elevator, and now you're thinking about the button. And I'm sure everybody has developed their strategies by now. I know nobody's just going to hit the button and then scratch with their finger and scratch their face. But again, that's just like one more obstacle that you got to think about. So yeah, to not really be dealing with elevators and the kind of living in a densely packed building. Of course, it's that much less to worry about. But
Yeah,
I still miss New York so much.
What is your routine out there? Do you like make sure that you get like groceries for the week? Are you like able to get outside at all?
Well, or do you even go to the grocery store? Like, are you like
or
getting
do deliveries?
Yeah, delivery.
It's a mix, but yeah, definitely the delivery is not too difficult here. I heard some stories from friends in New York that like the first couple of weeks order some delivery, some groceries from somewhere, and they'd be like, all right, maybe in 3 days or something. I imagine it's chilled out by now. But yeah, getting groceries delivered hasn't been too much of a problem. Neither is going to the grocery store. So yeah, it's a mix, trying to minimize trips outside. But yeah, I've also, I think like a lot of people, chilled out a little bit. I think there's a few weeks of like really not going outside much. And now I'll go for walks more often, and my steps have obviously plummeted. used to be a big stepper. I got to get those numbers back up.
Ezra, do you feel one way or another creatively? Are you like more focused? Are you more active? Do you feel like this is a time for you to really, take all of your ideas and put them into motion? Or are you more in the style of
like you're spiraling out of control on a very existential level?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not spiraling out of control, or no more than normal. Like anybody, I
Sure.
have my.
I mean, you are Jewish,
kind of,
so yeah.
Yeah, true. I've got my pessimistic moments and stuff. But one thing I've been thinking about is, I don't know, something about the lifestyle of being a musician for the past however long I've been doing it professionally, 10 plus years, 12 years, has kind of prepared me for this. Because when you go on tour and you go work your ass off for a month or more, and then you get home and you have a month off, that month will vanish, and you might not really do all that much, and hopefully you're not too hard on yourself because you're exhausted and you came home and it's like this, your life's a weird blur. So I think some people really feel like, oh man, I'm suddenly home for months. I feel like I just slammed on the brakes. This is crazy. All my routines are gone. Everything is so weird. Whereas for me, I'm like, I've been home for 3 months and it vanished in a second. I just zoned out. So there's something about, I'm pretty good at just frittering the day away. Just watching the time vanish.
Yeah. Does the greater pandemic idea color all of your creativity? Like if you're thinking about like writing, whether that's music or TV or film or whatever, does it sort of seep in and give you like some sort of base of where to go? Like, are you like writing things with COVID or, darker themes or heaviness, at all?
I'm mostly just trying to, I write some lyrics here and there, but my process has always been slow. So, I just write a lot of chord progressions these days, things where you don't have to think too much about, well, is that word going to seem corny in the post-COVID world? Is that phrase going to be taken out of context? These chord progressions can be taken out of context too, but not as obviously. Right. So I'm trying to focus on that stuff, and we'll see. Because I do feel like it's hard to. I've always believed that a good album is a bit of a snapshot of a moment, and if you're lucky, maybe it even feels a little bit ahead of the curve. Hopefully not too much, but a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of like, I don't know, mapping out some feelings or vibes of where the world's heading. And I think that's essentially impossible to do right now.
Yeah.
Because I've seen every type of opinion about what kind of music the world needs. I've seen people be like, well, the world needs like darker music to reflect the state of affairs. And then there was this like viral tweet, some like Billboard article that was like, music industry wants more happy songs, and people were like fighting about that. And you're like, look, it's that to me just feels like trying to predict the stock market.
Right.
You're just like, the national mood dropped 40 points. time to drop some happy shit. It's like that's not the way to think. So I feel like now's a good time to chill out, maybe work on some musical stuff, write down a few ideas, and wait a minute to kind of like really send it in the direction of an album.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, what's the smallest? Because I mean, like, you've had some, like, there's the obvious things that I think have influenced your music, and then there's like very small things. Like, I think that you had some like hip hop stuff in your first and second albums that were like especially overt. So like, what's the smallest like reference point that people might not know maybe influenced you, but like was an inside joke or something? Like, what was something that
holds a special place in your heart?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I think of the obvious things, like obviously people, early music, you know, there's this Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel vibe. There's kind of like a punk new wave vibe, Elvis Costello, Squeeze, and that kind of stuff. Obviously classical and Baroque music, and then there's some very notable allusions to classic hip hop. One of our songs on our third album is literally based on a Souls of Mischief song. It's like kind of built into the fabric of it. So yeah, those are all kind of key points. A kind of surprising influence. I don't know. That's a hard one because probably the really deep ones I got to keep secret anyway. So I don't know.
How has being a father changed your creative path?
Well, you know, we'll see. It was funny with kind of the timing of the last album because I wrote the vast majority of it before I even knew I was going to become a father, let alone, you know, was one and felt, you know, what that was like. So I was, you know, and we're pretty private anyway, but I was, you know, so when it kind of like became this public thing, I was like, oh man, now everybody's going to hear this record as being like the dad album. Right. And also the album it's called Father the Bride, so it has the word father in the title. But at the same time, so I was kind of like dreading that. I was like, ugh, all the critics and people are going to be like, this is like the fatherhood domestic album. And then actually it turned out that I got some really nice notes from people who kind of would say stuff about like, you know, when your first album came out, I was in college. Now I'm a dad, and I heard that you're a dad. And when I listened to this record, I felt something, and I really appreciate that actually. Yeah. So I'm not trying to correct them with like, actually, whatever you're feeling is pure projection. Because who knows? You know, the same way I was saying, sometimes if you're lucky, an album predicts some kind of vibe that's about to happen in culture or something that's going to happen in the world. You know, maybe you even predict it with your own life. So I can't deny that even if I didn't know explicitly I was going to become a dad, you know, when you're making a record in your early 30s, at the very least, you know that you're approaching middle age, and you know people who have had kids. Maybe not a lot. You know, I know musicians, so the average age of people I know who have kids is like, you know, 50. Yeah. Compared to like in a town where people have kids when they're 20. But right. But still, I think it has. Yeah, maybe it's a predictive thing. And when I look at the future, it's a little bit hard to say. I think it probably affects everybody differently because it's like, you know, one thing's for sure, it absolutely, having a kid or even just spending time with a kid, because I imagine aunts and uncles can feel this way, or just people who work with children, just it makes you think a lot about human nature and development and stuff that when you haven't spent any time with a child, you could totally forget about. And in a weird way, you know, childhood kind of makes you think about adulthood too. For sure. That's been an interesting thought that I've had. And, you know, I think there's a lot of psychology that kind of also goes in the school of thought, which is that kind of like everything that a child does when they're happy and when they're sad, it doesn't exactly vanish from adults. It shows itself in more sophisticated ways, or it gets hidden or moved around. But, you know, all this children feeling upset or lonely, or, you know, what's going to happen when that person walks out of the room. These things have a big impact all for the rest of your life. So I find all that stuff pretty interesting. So maybe that has some effect, because, you know, songwriting to some degree is about thinking about what it means to be a human and the interactions between people. And then I'm sure there's obviously going to be all sorts of feelings in the future,
for sure,
about like touring and stuff, and, you know, how to be present. So
yeah,
that's one upside to the quarantine.
Yeah, we've spoken to actually a lot of friends who have kids, and they've said that because, you know, when we show concern for our friends' kids, they're like, oh no, they're perfectly fine. Like, through all of this, they're sort of like, you know, just living in the moment. It's obviously adults who have to worry about the bigger picture. When it comes to your social media, do you have like a healthy diet of going online and staying offline, or have you found sometimes, like us, you wake up and immediately go to read the news and just dive right in and start your whole day from there?
I go back and forth. I've sometimes, like, I feel like I'm in a pretty good groove now. It's like, go on Twitter maybe a couple times a day, look around, barely, you know, feel like maybe click on a few links to articles. That's it. Check Instagram slightly more, but still not like, you know, endless hours. And, you know, and that's kind of it. But then I find it like sneaks up on you. Like, you feel like you're in a good groove, and the next thing you know, you've been like, why have I felt so weird for 3 weeks? And you realize, oh yeah, I've been spending hours and hours every day.
Yeah.
Just like looking at this shit,
yeah,
looking at people fight, wanting to like jump in the fray and holding yourself back. It's like so much extra drama and anxiety. So yeah, I definitely like slipped. And the weird part about slipping is that you can slip into like a really bad, I'm sure everybody feels this way, right? You could slip into a really bad rhythm of being on social media too much, being on the internet too much,
yeah,
not reading anything deeply, just using that like really small part of your brain that takes a few sentences. And then next thing you know, 4 months went by and you just feel like shit. And I think, to me, it's really similar actually to, because I've never had an amazing relationship with exercise either. And as I get older, I'm really trying to get more on top of it.
Yeah.
But it's that same kind of feeling where you're like, you're in a good groove, you're working out a few times a week. You say to yourself, man, I really feel good and happy and balanced when I do this. And then, you know, you got a crazy week with work, and you couldn't go to the gym or something. Yeah, next week.
And then the whole thing just gets derailed. Yeah.
And then a few months later, you might literally be like the world is bullshit. And you're kind of like, how did I get to this place? And then one party is like, well, you left a very significant mood boosting activity fall by the wayside. So that, yeah, there's something there. Like, so I'm really trying, and I think in these times, definitely the first couple of months, I was like slipping into less than great routines. Now I feel like I'm in a better spot, so hopefully I can keep it up.
Yeah, no, for us, by the way, like, we went into this and we started doing yoga from, there's this girl in Austin who's super popular on YouTube named Adrian, and she has a yoga series. And so, you know, we both do that on a regular basis with this girl who makes corny jokes, but it's like, you know, it's our corny jokes. You know, it feels like we're part of something, and like if you can give
it's what I imagine like how teens feel about different like YouTubers. Like, it's just like, oh, like, what is Adrian up to today?
Yeah.
Like, you have like a weird relationship with her now.
But we have that on one hand, and on the other hand, we were talking to Jim Jones yesterday, and Jimmy was just like, yeah, like I will you know, hit you up just like I hit Fat Joe up and all these other people to like keep you on this straight and narrow to make sure that you focus and exercise every day. So we have Adrian on one hand and Jim Jones on the other. So that's how we'll get through this, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, Ezra, are you working out like during all this? I know you said you have a weird relationship with working out. I've never really worked out before. Or
do you join Dave One and a-trak, who have just started biking religiously?
I'm not sure if, you know, I've moved around so much over the past decade. I actually am not sure where my bike is. It could be in New York. It could be in a storage facility in Long Island.
It's not your bike anymore.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
I got to find out.
That bike is for the streets.
Biking. I one decent thing I do is somebody put me onto the 7-minute workout, which there's a million versions on YouTube or apps, and it's a very simple 7-minute workout that does something. And I try to make sure at the bare minimum I do the 7-minute workout every day, which apparently was developed by scientists. But, you know, sometimes I say to myself, what do you think you're accomplishing just 7 minutes every day?
Well,
I need to, like,
I mean, there's something about Mary.
Yeah.
You know, 7 is the magic number.
Yeah. No. So there's that. I want to do a little bit more, and I also just gotta. I just gotta like. Don't have my usual like eating routine either. Way more pasta and things like that.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ezra, it is wonderful to hear your voice. It's, I think, very important that your voice continues throughout this thing in whatever course it takes. And by the way, at whatever pace it takes too. So we're wishing you all the luck in creative ventures. I think we're wishing
Thank you.
All you and yours all the best. Stay healthy, stay indoors, and stay creative. And hopefully on the other side of this, we can sit down and have a real hour-long podcast or internet radio thing, whatever we'll call it. And until then, be well. All right.
Absolutely. Good talking to you guys.
Jeff, let's get on the phone now with our friend Parks from the Joe Budden Podcast.
Hello.
Parks! What up?
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing all right. Listen, you like us work out of home, so staying at home this amount of hours, this amount of days isn't exactly foreign to you, but how are you taking to it?
It's not foreign to me at all. It's fine.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be completely honest, it's fine. It's actually given me a lot of time to get done stuff that I wouldn't have time to do while I'm running around on all types of film sets and recording studios and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
It also must be like really nice not to have Joe Budden sitting in your house for like 6 hours.
My rug is very thankful.
Yeah. No, because as Parks mentioned, Joe does show up ahead of time and likes to just hang out.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Parks, I think people, once they saw the Joe Budden podcast not put out any episodes for a couple weeks, there was a little cause for concern. Can you just talk about the plan of action that you guys took to make sure that you could record remotely and that all your sound would be A+ as usual?
It was difficult. We spent a lot of days doing test runs and trying different things, and the first episode sounded like shit. We got catfished by Zoom.
Really?
Wait, what does that mean?
So we did a trial run with Zoom, and it sounded great, but everyone wasn't on, and it wasn't as long, I guess. So I think when Zoom, you put more people on it, it gets bogged down, and it decreases the audio quality. So
I definitely thought that you meant that like a dick had shown up.
Yeah,
and I
someone
was like,
showed up in
did
your
this
thing,
not?
yeah.
No, we did not get Zoom bumped, fortunately. But yeah, it didn't sound good. So then we found a new way where everybody basically records at home and then sends me all the shit, and then I gotta sit there for hours lining it all up. It's just kind of annoying, but it works, so it's cool.
Well, by the way, you are the person that like is now the go-to for if any problems go wrong
On the internet?
Yeah, on the internet, like people just call Parks.
It's quite a cross to bear burden.
Yeah. I think that we were particularly happy that you still returned our texts. If we have any issues with sound, we go to you. But when it came to the DJ Premier and RZA battle, there were so many people who were excited that you were there to save the day.
The NBA shouted me out, guys.
That's fucking nuts. That's fucking nuts.
That's like Savon being shouted out by Kim Kardashian, you know?
Yeah.
It was up there. Not quite. It wasn't that level, but the NBA is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So how did that go down? Like, did you anticipate anything going wrong? Were you letting everyone know that you would be there, or did you heard something yourself and decided to jump into the deep end?
I mean, I've watched the battle things pretty faithfully, so I was just watching, and it was kind of rough to listen to. So I texted Preem, and he relayed the message to RZA, and things got better. So I was just happy as a fan, and also to help DJ Premier and the RZA was like everything of my teenage dreams.
Yeah. Had you known about iRig before, and did you ever want to hear about iRig afterwards?
I've been familiar with iRig, yeah. There's a couple people that I can't remember the producer's name. There's a producer that is fairly famous for using just his iPhone and iRig. In any case, I'm familiar with it, but I didn't realize that it added that latency or whatever, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I don't want to talk about iRig anymore.
Not until that sponsorship check comes in.
That's right. Are there any DJs that you see when you tune into their Instagram lives who are doing it better than another DJ?
I mean, sonically, no. I mean, not really. I've been enjoying Lord Finesse's DJ sets a lot. First of all, he's one of my favorite people in the world, and but he plays the music that I want to hear. He's blending like 90s hip hop, and he's playing R&B from the 80s and 90s, and I love what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've been tuning into, obviously, the D-Nices and the Questloves and all that, but like I've been really enjoying what DJ Green Lantern's been doing. I think that it's been like refreshing. He's been doing like themed nights. He's been, implementing pictures into his backgrounds and really doing cool things that way. Just Blaze is another one who has like I think
has been cool
green screens like around his like studio, and that he's able to like just put different images as if he is on some sort of like battleship, out in outer space.
I feel like I've been going into like very weird corners. Like I was watching Zach Bia or whatever his name is, like these like influencer kids who hang out with Drake.
Okay.
And they were doing like these very strange like projections before anybody was doing green screen. Like they were the first ones that I saw. And
I
was
really?
Just like, what? Like I was so just like off the deep end, just like trying to figure out how they were doing this.
Well, Parks, is there room for you to jump in and do a battle much like Rory or Joe were able to do battles? Like, and if so, who are you looking to?
By the way, this is Mall Erasure, and I will not have it.
Oh, no, that's true. Maul absolutely started it off. But in terms of where you want to go with it, is there room for you?
I haven't really. I haven't thought about it, honestly. I mean, I guess I've thought about it, but I don't know. I don't know.
You don't feel passionately about one artist more than another?
I mean, sure. I don't know who I would do though. Because I feel like the people that I would do have already done their sets. So,
are you here? Are you here for more artists to get involved rather than just like the producers or the songwriters?
I like all of it, honestly. I like the producers doing it. I like DJs doing it because that shines light on that side of the culture. I think that's really cool. I like everyone doing it. I really do. I think that they should continue to make sure that they include everybody because although I understand getting the super megastars in there, having songwriters who people may not be familiar with and having producers that people don't know they did this record and that record, I think that's important and really cool.
Yeah.
Parks, we did an episode a few days ago, I think like earlier this week, that was 3 engineers.
Yes, we called it the engineers episode.
But can we call this one the engineers episode, even though you are the only engineer that's actually on it?
I'm kind of sad that I wasn't on the last one. So, I mean,
Parks, when you record,
who else is on this one with me?
When you,
it's Ezra Koenig from
Vampire Weekend.
And
wow.
it's
Huge
Joseph.
fan.
Yeah, and Joseph Patel, formerly of MTV News, and shot a bunch of documentaries. Currently finishing one off with Questlove.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, but Park, since we have you here, when you record someone, do you like to make sure to record low so you don't have them hitting the ceiling or whatever, or do you sort of like plan ahead and understand that maybe there's some middle ground for them if they have a lot of range?
I record with compression almost always, so that kind of negates the need for.
So I'm sorry, you record with compression.
Hardware compression
actively on while you're recording.
After the preamp, after the mic goes to the preamp goes to the compressor goes to the interface. So I have something catching peaks, and I have like a certain sweet spot depending on the compressor that I'm using where I want it to hit. So as long as they're hitting in that range, then I'm cool. And if they go too hot, it'll catch it. So it won't peak.
Are we doing something wrong that we're not using compression until afterwards?
No, there's different ways to do it. There's different philosophies behind
that
doing
means
it.
yes.
Yeah. Like Parks is like being like very just like yeah. No, I mean like you're doing fine, sweetie. But like
Here's the thing: is if you don't really know how to use compressors well.
Damn.
No shots.
Sounds like some.
I'm speaking in general for the general listening public here.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to use compression well, you can
like Eric doesn't. Yeah.
Over compress, and it'll sound crazy. So I think you guys are doing the safe thing.
Thank you. Well,
there's nothing wrong with these systems that you're using. I just
are you winking?
I know. Yeah. He has his fingers crossed, and it is opposite day. That's right.
Yeah. Wait. While we are talking about like engineering problems. Okay, so when we call people, you can tell on our end by the ring whether it's going to be a high fidelity call or not. You know, like, because if it rings low, then you're just like, you have to dump the call. And so you end up looking like a psychopath because you call people like 4 times and it rings once and you just keep hanging up until you get a good ring. So is there any way to get around that?
I would recommend using FaceTime audio if it's at all possible.
Yeah, we have done that too, and that has worked. But it also has this weird quality to it, I feel like, where it's like super clear and it's almost like not of this world, if that makes any sense.
But also, like, the delays are very weird. Like, it'll glitch in weird ways.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with that.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're only 50...
The only other way to do it would be to have them record, like, on GarageBand or something on their laptop and then send you the file afterward.
Yeah, and
is it too late for you to do that right now?
Yeah, Parks is like,
was planning on doing it, but we got started. So
Parks is like Rick Rubin. He just like records all the time.
Yeah, or like Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Do you feel like your workload has increased now that you have all these artists at home and seemingly a lot of them do have equipment to start recording? Are they sending you more stuff now, or is it sort of like quieted it down, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I think it's kind of the same in a way. There are definitely more people recording from home, and like we talked about earlier, a lot of troubleshooting and, hey, how do I do X, Y, Z? So that's been increased a lot, just like helping people figure out how to record. I've been doing that a lot. But as far as like day to day, people send me sessions, I would say it's pretty much the same-ish.
And does it matter that they're not there with you? Like, do you prefer to be by yourself when you're doing a mix, or do you want an artist there to sort of bounce ideas off of in person?
Oh, I mix by myself almost exclusively, unless I'm working with, a producer like Premiere or Showbiz or, some producer that is very hands-on with their stuff.
Yeah.
I prefer to mix by myself because I find that people will start suggesting things, like you'll be working on one thing and they'll be suggesting things that like I'm not there yet, bro. Like I know that you want like a delay here, but I'm still working on your EQ or, whatever. So it can be kind of frustrating having someone in the room with me, even, during regular times.
Yeah.
So this is fine. Although there are times when, there's something very specific that they want or whatever, and that gets a little difficult because you're sending things back and forth a million times and trying to hopefully do it right, or getting on a Zoom and things aren't really clear. So, it just leads to a lot more revisions, I guess, ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
When you're giving artists advice about how to set up like their home studios and all that stuff, does part of you want to just like give bad advice so that they can keep coming back to you?
No, actually, no. I want the shit to sound good. So when they send it to me, I can mix it and it sounds good.
Well, okay, but let me like put some more context to this. So I ordered clippers to cut my own hair, and I feel like a little bit like I'm taking my barber's job if I start doing. And by the way, I haven't actually cut my hair yet,
right.
But like in the instance that I do really well, like I might be taking my barber's job away.
Yeah, possibly. I cut my hair frequently. I haven't. I'm just using this as an excuse to grow a long curly afro. But I kind of look like I could be related to you guys now. But yeah, I mean, listen. I ultimately, well, I guess this is not a equal thing to a barber situation, but whatever's going to make this stuff sound good is going to make my job easier ultimately. So. Yeah, I want it to be good.
Yeah, I mean,
and plus, really like it's hard to record yourself if you're a vocalist and you want to like punch in a mid verse or whatever. That's not an easy thing to do. So,
well, I mean, it's also not easy to cut your hair.
That is true. That is true. It's very difficult.
Parks, you are recently engaged. Congratulations once again. How does this whole COVID-19 pandemic shutdown lockdown thing affect your wedding planning?
We weren't planning to get married till 2021, so I guess that will remain to be seen. Hopefully it doesn't really affect it much. I mean, we're going to have like some engagement parties and stuff like that obviously can't really happen, but
no, they can. You can just do it on Zoom. Do a Zoom
we do
party.
have parties every single weekend on Zoom with all our loved ones. So
oh wow, you guys are popping.
Yeah. No, that's kind of our ritual. Is Friday nights or Saturday nights we get on Zooms with our friends and family and
What is your background?
On Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, it's my house.
Wait,
my shit is popping, guys.
when I asked for what's your background, did you think I was gonna you were gonna say like Filipino or something?
Yes, actually.
No, but you don't do like a beach in your background. You don't do like a funny picture of like a relative or anything like that.
Wait, do you do the room that like the Joe Budden podcast like background?
Oh, that that background.
Are you really do that?
I do. We have like cool lights. Like we have like film lights. So we do like purples and blues, and I have 2 different camera angles, and I have a sound effects board hooked up.
The cloud.
It's a pretty entertaining Friday night.
No, that's a great Zoom.
Yeah, the cloud of having the Joe Budden podcast like background as your background.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's like The Office, like for most people.
Yeah,
you know?
but like you're actually there.
Yeah. I think that now we have to step up our Zoom with like Mom and Aunt Jane and Dan, and get some sound effects there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't cut them short, guys.
Yeah. Parks, how often do you get out of the house? So we're people like you, like we said, we live this life of, hey, we record from our house, we work from our house, we live in our house.
That is our life.
That's our life. But like we've taken the time to get out and go for like a mile walk, or get out. We do our food shopping at midnight because we have a 24-hour place.
But also, I mean, like we live on the Upper West Side, and it's emptied out because a lot of people have left for like the Hamptons or like places that we cannot afford and we have no connections to. So like, how does Astoria feel right now? Like, what is the mood around you?
Well, for starters, I don't go out very much. I have like a little bit of a backyard that I can go out and get fresh air in, and we work out back there a little bit, do little exercises, and I go to the grocery store probably twice a week. I try not to go very often.
Right.
And get everything that I can get delivered, and that's about it. But Astoria is still very kind of much the same, except for people are wearing masks now. I mean, there's kind of a lot of people in the street, which is a little scary, but it is what it is. I mean, especially on a nice day like today.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is that like the incidence rate has gone down so much because like they say that masks are way more effective than they had thought. And so, it's a good thing that that everybody's wearing masks, you know?
Parks, when it came to doing this new remote version of the Joe Budden podcast, was there any thought in your mind? Listen, it's way funnier to have that camera set up and you be off camera still. Was there any possibility that you would be on camera when you guys started?
I just didn't, because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it's great.
I've had people say you should get on camera, but I think it's funnier with me off camera.
Yeah.
It's not like there's no science or reason behind it. I just think it's funny. I'm not like trying to build a shroud of mystery or all these things. It's just I think it's funny, so I continue to do it. Well, it's not really that. It's not that deep.
No, it's been pretty great, and I'm very glad that you guys got the audio straight, because it sounds once again like you're all there, that you're all with each other, and still getting the same old Joe Budden podcast. So for that, we appreciate you. For the audio advice, we appreciate you. And this Saturday, when Nelly and Ludacris go against each other, we'll look forward to hearing your voice in the background should they need any help. Parks, be safe out there. Take care of yourself, you and yours, and we'll be checking in, all right?
Thank you, guys. Thanks for calling.
Let's get on the phone now with our friend, the documentarian, Joseph Patel.
Hello.
Joseph!
What up?
You know how long I've been waiting for this call?
You told us 3 years, and Jeff read that text aloud, and I was just like, what happened to the first 2 years? Joseph, how are you and yours doing?
Yeah, we're doing okay. It's very heavy, so it takes a conscious effort to not always have that heaviness on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. But healthy together, which is fortunate and a blessing. So.
I mean, how are you keeping your mind off of things? Like, what do you do every day to, move forward?
Yeah, it's weird because up until last Friday, I was still working on this documentary that I'm producing with Questlove.
Yes.
And starting at the beginning of March into self-isolation / quarantine, we were still working on it for however many weeks that was, 6 or 7 weeks. So that was strange because it gave me some sort of structure for my day, and I'd have to wake up and do team calls. Everyone's working out of their own homes. Thankfully, our editor has a full setup in his house. And then it just took a lot of discipline just to work through the day and not get distracted. So for me, there's been a built-in structure for the most part. And I think that's really important to just, at least for me, like if I don't have any structure to my day, then it just goes off the rails.
For sure.
Right. Then I'm staring at a box of, hip hop ephemera for 16 hours straight.
Well, actually, worse would probably be staring at like Trump on your television all day. So at least you have the memorabilia there. So
yeah, right. Yeah. So it's been okay now since last Friday. This week, the 4 days this week, it's been good. It's been good just to the weather's been nice, so going out on walks with my wife and my dog, and just being able to sleep in a little bit. But yeah.
Well, when it comes to that documentary, has the sort of open-endedness of this thing, the reality that we're all not going to be in movie theaters, we're all not going to be doing things traditionally moving forward, does the idea that everything now is going to be direct to consumer, seen at home through Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, does that change anything in terms of how you guys put together this documentary?
I mean, probably not. It won't change anything, but I think it does change our expectations. Like, I think one of the expectations going into this project when we started this 6 months ago was that it was going to be a theatrical documentary. We made very careful decisions to make it not feel like something on television. Mm-hmm. Not to knock that, but just we went in with wanting very cinematic interviews. Very, an editing style that made you feel like, you weren't just watching this on a TV somewhere, but draw people into theaters. So that's what we did. And
now it all looks like Zoom calls.
yeah. And now everything on television looks like you're on Zoom. So, I don't think it'll change anything else because we're basically paused until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
We've worked about as far on this documentary as we can do. We still have a couple of interviews left to do, and we've sort of boxed ourselves into a corner, right? Like we made the interviews look very cinematic and all in one location, and now we're boxed in because any interviews that we do that aren't in that under those circumstances is going to look,
like super jarring. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
there is that problem with, holding yourself up to a high standard and doing a good job in the first place,
Yeah, I mean, which is, I guess we're seeing the sort of flip side of that, but
yeah. Well, Joseph, we like to give people, their flowers, obviously, while they're here, and I think that more and more we're seeing the unfortunate other side of that thing. So while we have you on the line, thank you for what you did 15 years ago with MTV's My Block. I think that was it's not hyperbole to say that really did move this culture to a national platform unlike we had seen before. And to go down to Houston, to go to Chicago, to go to different places and expose the rest of the nation to pockets of the country that now I think we all sort of take for granted. Now it's like, oh yeah, of course there's rappers from Houston who are like super popular. Of course there's rappers from the Midwest that, are on your radio every day.
Or the Bay or anywhere.
Anywhere. Now it's like just normal. Back then it was a new thing, and that really did start with you guys taking your cameras down to places that we hadn't been before.
Man, that is incredibly sweet of you guys to say, and I'm very touched by that.
Do you have any particularly good stories from that time in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that My Block Houston was that was an idea that I pitched about a year after I'd started at MTV, and I came in as a writer. And 6 months later, I produced my first piece, and 6 months after that, I pitched this My Block thing. And originally, it was pitched as a series of 5 different stories on Houston, and it would, because MTV used to do this thing where they'd have like Hip Hop Week on MTV2 and on MTV proper. So I said, let's take over. Let's have Houston take over for the entire week, and these are the stories I want to do. And those went so well that at the end, my boss at the time, Ocean McAdams, he's like, why don't we comp this together into a 30-minute show? Let's give it a title, and let's put it up and see how it does. So we did that, and it did great. Like it was sort of it was surprising the numbers that it did, and the thing that really surprised everybody is that every time it did a repeat, it would get the same numbers.
Wow!
So whether it was on at 3:30 in the afternoon or at like midnight, it would pull in like 500,000 viewers.
That's dope.
And so they kept repeating it, and then a week later, they're like, "Listen, we want you to do another one. Where's next?" And so we did My Block Memphis. And then I think after Memphis, we did the Bay, Puerto Rico, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, and Virginia Beach.
Did you ever think about just like making up some scenes just so you could go for the trip?
Well, I'll tell you what. In 2006, I got a call from someone inside the building, an attorney at MTV, who was representing a rapper named Drake from Toronto.
Wow.
And they wanted to do a My Block episode in Toronto.
And you laughed and laughed and laughed.
I laughed and I laughed. I mean, well, what's funny actually, because like on my indie backpack hip hop roots, like I knew enough rappers in Toronto, right? Like who had come from Toronto,
sure, through
the years. But like, it was the sort of the magic sweet spot for My Block was scenes that were underground that were about to pop. Right?
Yeah.
And the A block was always the artist that you most recognize, but then I always like to do an artist that you're going to hear about in the future, and then also a segment we do on something really just for like the heads. So like I remember when we did My Block Memphis, we did a segment on the Barkays.
Wow.
Who were on Stax.
Yeah, totally.
And the connection was that Jazzy Faye, who
his
was father
yeah,
his father was in the Barkays.
Absolutely.
And so we did a segment on Jazzy Faye and his father, and how his father is one of the people that didn't get on the plane with Otis Redding when Otis Redding's plane went down.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to do that on MTV was always like, there's always one segment like that in every episode. What was funny about shooting that whole series though is that we would go into a city for like 2 weeks at a time. And this is when I was a lot younger. So we would shoot all day. And then at night we'd just go out all night with like the locals or with people who like 3-6 Mafia took us to the strip club 2 nights in a row.
Wow.
And we would get maybe like 2 hours of sleep a night. And it's like, I look back on that now and I'm like, I don't even know how I survived that.
You really did Memphis right.
What was that?
I said you really did Memphis right.
We did. It's funny because there's a lesson that Juicy J imparted on us back then. This was 2005, yeah. And we were sitting in the back of his Maybach, and he's like, he didn't want to, like, we were sitting and waiting for the rest of the crew to come, and he's like, we can't just sit here. We've got to drive around. And I was like, well, why? They'll be here any minute. He's like, nah. He's like, you don't understand. A sitting duck always gets plucked.
Oh.
And I was just like, okay. And I didn't really know what he meant. And then we shot at 3-6 Mafia's, like the first house they lived in Memphis. And within 15 minutes, there was like 25 people there.
Oh my God.
Within 45 minutes, there was like 150 people there.
Wow.
And then by the time we were done with the interview, like it was a bit of a scene, and like the cops had to break it up.
Wow.
Who is the rapper that you met throughout all of these, trips around the United States that you found had a following that you were particularly impressed by?
You mean unexpectedly?
Sure.
I don't know, man. Chingo Bling.
Yeah?
Yeah, like Chingo Bling had a huge following in Houston in 2005. I think primarily because he sold tamales out of his trunk.
Sure.
but he was big in 2005.
Yeah, but how did that reveal itself?
I mean, we saw this dude driving around Houston selling tamales out of his trunk, and Matt Sanzala was like, "Oh, that's Chingo Bling," and I was like, "Okay," and then I listened to his music, and I saw him on these mixtapes, and I was like, this will make good TV. It's not necessarily music I listen to out of Houston,
sure,
but it would just make great television.
By the way, that's so interesting to me because hearing it now, with 2020 ears, I'm like, oh, you would just research, you would just look things up online, but back then you had to actually world. You were going down there and you were discovering for yourself what the scene was like before actually reporting on it.
I mean, sort of I think. Based on I knew going into Houston that we wanted to interview XYZ, right? It starts with Bun B and UGK doing that story. Mike Jones was big, and that's really that was the impetus for the entire show was Still Tippin'.
There you go.
Yeah.
But then when you're down there, and then you start right, it's like you do what any of us do whenever we go anywhere. Is you ask the people that you love and respect what they're listening to, and that's how we found Chameleonaire, for example. And actually, that's not true because we knew Chameleonaire from Still Tippin', the original version.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll find people. I think Trey Songz, when we did Virginia Beach, it was his first time on television because when we asked the people down in Virginia Beach, what are you listening to from down here? They were like, oh, this dude Trey Songz.
That's crazy.
And
so he wasn't signed yet.
I think he was just coming out. But it was his first time on TV. I remember his mom was our age. His mom was gorgeous, and she invited us to her home, and we had dinner with Trey and his mom, and it was just oh, this dude actually has skills. It's a good story, and then you make a few calls and you realize, oh yeah, this guy's actually going to be something. So.
Man.
Yeah.
Joseph, what do you think when you watch Versus these days and you see things like a Nelly versus Ludacris coming up this weekend, or even if you think back to the Scott Storch thing and your relationship with Scott when you did that documentary only a couple of years ago, now to have him, recognized for music that, he still has a career ongoing, but a lot of these guys, Babyface and Teddy Riley, have catalog music that are being discovered these days by younger and younger generations. What do you think when you see these artists there?
I mean, I love it. I love what you guys are doing, even just when you were saying, giving people flowers while they're alive. I appreciate that personally, what you guys just said, but I know that that's your spirit, and I think that is really important. I mean, it's such a weird thing, right? If I told you an artist that I'm listening to right now that you guys hadn't heard of, within 10 minutes you could find everything they've ever done.
Yeah.
And so, I think having some sort of other connection with these artists, whether kids say know these artists or not, but being able to have some sort of connection, have some sort of experience. A lot of us, our favorite artists are because we first heard them on a mixtape, or we first met them, or we saw them perform live. You need some sort of connection in order to fall in love with something. And I think that leave it to hip hop to get creative during a pandemic and create these opportunities for people to not only feel nostalgic and relive moments and for people who don't know those artists to discover those artists, but also the sense of community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been the most amazing thing is I see you guys up in the live stream, Instagram lives.
Yeah.
It's cool to see when you join a live stream of D Nice spinning and there's like, or Questlove, and there's like 15 people that are also doing the same thing. Like, that's cool.
I think it's also great too watching like the songwriters down in Atlanta. Like Brian Michael Cox has been doing a series that's been like really cool, where like people are just sharing stories, and it's like sort of a live podcast or some sort of like panel discussion that you would see.
It feels like 92nd Street Y.
Yeah, totally.
Like to have two professionals sort of just talk about the inside baseball of their profession.
Yeah.
Like, and you just never really got to see that outside of like a paid environment, and so to get it for free, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's also just like, I mean, you guys have done enough interviews where like, when sometimes you're in the studio with somebody, and I remember this from like my writing days, is like when you're like hanging out in the studio with somebody and like another artist comes by and you like witness a conversation they're having about their craft.
Yeah.
Like now that's like at our fingertips, right? And I think the artists are bored as shit themselves.
Yeah.
So
no, 100%.
They're willing to talk to everybody. But two, it's just like being able to have access to that is incredible. But the funny thing is like, like Bun B will DJ like a New Orleans two nights he did New Orleans sets last week.
It's so
right?
good, yeah.
And it's so good, and you're like, when in the world would you ever have an opportunity to listen to like a set from Bun B of his favorite Louisiana tracks?
It's
That's sometimes there's like 2,000 people in there, and sometimes there's 150 people in there, and you're just like, yo, this is crazy.
Yeah. By the way, like you and we have been to a zillion events. I think one of the last times that I was outside was we actually ran into each other at Questlove's birthday party.
Yes.
Which was like an extravagant affair. He rented out a movie house, and he had like different events throughout the day, watched 5 different movies with 8 different food courses. Like, it was insane.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, what's like an event that popped out to you that like over your years in the industry, that was just like so unforgettable, you were just like, I cannot believe that I was in this place?
Wait, what's the question?
Just that, like, you were talking about like how Bun B was DJing, and how like in what world would you be able to see that? And then that led me to think about the time that we saw you at Questlove's birthday party, and I was just like, oh, you want to know what? Like, what's an event or a space that you've been in that you were just like, this is a crazy place that I actually am, like, I'm here in real life?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of those, man. I'm old. I mean, but let's talk about Questlove's birthday party for a second. Like I can't even imagine how much money he spent on that.
Oh,
to curate his birthday for all of us.
It was pretty special.
Yeah.
Wait, what movie did you guys see?
We were there for the early end.
Well, okay, so Questlove sort of forgot to invite us. And then he DM'd us, and he was like, by the way, you don't know about this thing, but it's like tomorrow. And I'd love for you to be there, but the only slot that you can go to is the first one, which is early in the morning. It's cartoons and cereal. Now, Eric and I do not like cartoons, nor do we like cereal, like sugar cereal, really. Nor do I really like getting up early to go to Brooklyn.
But we do like Questlove.
We love Questlove, and we also love, just like going to things. And so we
trekked all the way out there. We took our brother Dan, and we had a really enjoyable time.
It was the best.
It was a fun time.
I had a great time.
I got the same email about an hour before you guys, probably, because I was able to make it to the Coming to America screening.
Oh, it's so dope.
Yeah, it's a great one.
But you guys got the full live experience with like people and games, and whatever. And then I heard when they did Goodfellas later that day, it was like an 8-course meal, right? Like every time they ate on screen, like you got a meal served at your seat. And I kind of wish I was there for that.
Joseph, I'm not I like to have my birthday parties like a dinner with like my friends that I've known the longest. I'm not super into like the bigger, more extravagant, like everybody show up and do a birthday thing.
Well, not
right
yet.
There with you.
Well, I'm saying more and more these days when I see all these Zoom birthday parties, I'm like, man, I cannot wait until this is all over and we can actually gather with other human beings and celebrate and spend.
I hate Zoom birthdays.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm never flaking on an invite ever again in my life.
No. You know who had it right this entire time was John Carmonica, who had, this reunion that it felt like every year. Although our mom, every time we told her we're going to John's birthday party where we would run into all of our friends that we hadn't seen since last year, she'd be like, has it been a year already?
She's like, I feel like John has like 6 birthdays a year.
But he's always doing it right.
Funny, but it's exactly right. Like, you go to John's birthday party at Bond's to see not only John, but all the other people you haven't seen since John's last birthday party at Bond's.
It's pretty spectacular. And you know what? There's a lot that I miss from the outside world. One of those is running into you, Joseph, when we see you outside. We're sending you our love. We appreciate you. Thanks for everything. We'll be checking in, obviously. And until then, be safe.
Likewise, guys. Thank you for this.
Shout out to Joseph Patel. Shout out to Parks from the Joe Budden Podcast. And shout out to Ezra Koenig. Jeff, are we back tomorrow?
We are back tomorrow. We're also back Sunday. And then after that,
we'll be back in a week. As always, guys, not for real, for real.
Sure.
We'll see you guys tomorrow.